In 2001 the PCRM won parliamentary elections with slightly more than 50% of the vote, ending a decade of rule by a reformist government. Also through the compromat, Vladimir Plotnyuk became the director of Petrom Moldova in 2001, during the communist government of 2001 to 2009, protected by Voronin. Plotnyuk ceased business and quarreled with all who stood in his way, when the foundations of the Plotnyuk Empire were laid. During Voronin's second term as president, almost the entire business, private enterprises, financial flows, administrative positions, changed its leaders, benefiting from this massive change of ownership and influence, becoming none other than Plotnyuk. A single person who focused on all state structures and significant business in Moldova. If we talk about Romanian politicians, it is worth mentioning here a lot of PSD members, Adrian Năstase and Ion Iliescu. When they were in power, they strongly promoted Plotnyuk as a basic man in the power system in the Republic of Moldova. Then came Ponta, Corlaton, Milescu and other smaller ones who held him in their arms and endorsed Plotnyuk, including in the West, as a guarantor of the stability of the Republic of Moldova. And let us not forget Norica Nicolae, the most ardent agent of the oligarch in the European institutions, especially in the European Parliament. Parliamentary elections were held in Moldova on April 5, 2009. Following the announcement of preliminary election results on April 6, 2009, which showed the Party of Communists of the Republic of Moldova, PCRM, victorious, winning approximately 50% of the votes, the opposition rejected the results, accusing the authorities of falsification in the course of counting the votes and demanded new elections. Opposition have organized protest demonstrations in the center of Chisinau on April 6 and 7. The demonstration spun out of control and escalated into a riot on April 7, with protesters attacking the parliament building and the presidential palace. I wrote above that tourists who were filmed with a hidden camera having sex are blackmailed, Russian secret services are interested in being promoted in their careers, and for that the Russians have created brilliant plans for their tourists to be promoted. I think I should write that among the Romanian tourists who provide services for Russians working in state institutions in Romania are presidential advisors, journalists, deputies, businessmen, people working in SRI and SIE, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ambassadors of Romania accredited to European Union countries. Any student from the Republic of Moldova knows that Plotnyuk worked for Voronin and Plotnyuk also helped Dodon become president, but the Romanians are the ones who promoted Plotnyuk in Washington. Also, Plotnyuk helped the Russian mafia launder $23 billion. He coordinated the disappearance of $1 billion, 18% of Moldova's GDP. He is a man who put a country on logs. He is also guilty of depopulating the country, of corrupting institutions, of money laundering. It represents a mafia structure that captured a state. Russian politics has become very sophisticated, are smarter, and because of this the Republic of Moldova is not a member of the EU and NATO, although the USA has high-performance technology and enormous financial resources. Plotnyuk was presented by the Romanians in Washington as being against the Russians, and in Moldova everyone knew who Plotnyuk was. If a person was against Plotnyuk, he tried to corrupt him with money. If in most cases Moldovans accepted the money, who refused the money went to provocations, criminal cases ordered by prosecutors, police, and those who went abroad. Plotnyuk with the help of the Romanians tried to prove that the person was a Russian spy and that he was trying to discredit him. All the information collected from the Romanians was sent to the Russians by Plotnyuk, and the Russians sent their agents to contact the person who was against Plotnyuk so that they could see the counterintelligence services, and that was the end of the Russians' job. Because the person who was a problem for Plotnyuk was still destroyed by these counterintelligence services. Americans believe that if Plotnyuk helped them put a person in a leadership position, for example the Director of Intelligence and Security in Moldova, they begin to believe that he, the director, is their man, but the reality is that the man of the Russians will be promoted and supported by the Americans, but who will do the Russian policy. If a person who is not controlled by the Russians tries to get in touch with the Americans directly, the Russians mobilize all human resources for that person to be destroyed, and for that they usually turn to the Romanians. Romania is a NATO member, they are considered reliable partners, they buy weapons from Americans worth billions, and Americans will never quarrel with Romanians over a person. Even if the Americans understood that the person is right, they will watch as the Romanians destroy him. If the Americans had analysts on the ex-Soviet space, Crimea would have been part of Ukraine today, and Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine were now members of the EU and NATO, but this will not happen in the future. Activists from Moldova were also selected by former communists who changed their political orientation and are now called Democrats, Socialists, or businessmen. A person who has been a GRU member, KGB, he will be loyal or blackmailed by the end of his life. Communist Vladimir Voronin was the leader of the Republic of Moldova from 2001 to 2009. In April 2009 there was an anti-communist revolution in Moldova. Voronin and Plotniuk were very scared on April 7, 2009. All the communist leaders were scared of the youth uprising. On April 7, 2009, Igor Dodon, member of the Communist Party, from March 31, 2008 to September 14, 2009 was first Deputy Prime Minister, and Zhinădea Greceanii, member of the Communist Party, was the Prime Minister of Moldova from March 31, 2008 to September 14, 2009. A communist will never become a liberal. From 2001 to 2009 the Republic of Moldova was led by the Communist Party. The President of the country, the Prime Minister and the President of the Parliament were communists. In the Moldovan government, ministers were also elected from the Communist Party. The deputy ministers were also elected from the members of the Communist Party, and it is important that those from the West know who leads Moldova now. The fact that they changed their names and moved from one camp to another doesn't make them pro-European. Nothing more dangerous than some former communists who changed their name to integrate us into the European Union. Even if it was not possible to travel in the countries of the European Union without visas, many citizens chose to go and work illegally in the European Union. From 2001 to 2009, Moldova was ruled by the Communist Party, and the communist regime was led by Vladimir Voronin, and if more than 30,000 young people had not come out against the communist regime, they, the communists, would have ruled for another 4 years. Following the April 7 protests, young people were killed and many were locked up in police stations and tortured. After they lost power, some of the communists changed their name or moved to other parties because some of them were afraid of being closed or adapted very quickly to the situation in the country. Some who worked for the communist regime changed their color earlier. The problem is that even today Moldova is ruled by those who worked for the Voronin regime, and Vladimir Voronin himself is a deputy in the Parliament of the Republic of Moldova, and even to this day he has not answered for the crimes of April 7. The young people who protested against the regime were tortured, beaten, or had criminal cases opened against them by the communist regime. Those who rule Moldova today are looking for ways to close them. Some of them were isolated, some were bought. Others are blackmailed, and the people who neither blackmail works nor were able to buy them are the danger for them, for communists who declare themselves pro-European and communists who reformed in socialists, and there is still the Communist Party which is still in parliament. When in the Republic of Moldova you could leave the country and work in another country, some chose to work for the communist regime even though they knew it was a criminal regime. Journalists who are controlled by oligarchs or by people who had connections with the communist regime in the USSR like Lusinski, they don't really talk or write about it, and only young people are promoted who want to reach the leadership and defend their interests in the future.